Yeah, watch all the cords.
I know.
They're booby trapped.
That's right. Okay. Good evening. We're about to get started. If I could have everyone please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, if you'll remain, or you can have a seat. I'm going to do the invocation very briefly, and then we're going to get started. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for everyone who is in our community and the Beach Church, and all of those who have come out tonight to learn and to make judgments and to be educated about how we can improve our community. We ask you to be with our guests and our speakers as they deliver their notes tonight. We ask you to please be with those that we've lost this year, Captain Lively, Maury Dries, and also our dear Glenn Wyndham. We ask all of this in your son Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, thank you guys. Welcome. I am very, very, very excited about the turnout, and I promise you that we do not have a lot of controversial business, so we're going to get through our business part so you can listen to Mr. Holly, the gentleman that you came here to learn about, and to learn about the path to incorporation on Pensacola Beach. And before we get started, I would like to welcome our elected officials. I'm going to go ahead and start at the top. So we are very glad to have Commissioner Ashley Hoffberger here with us this evening. We also have Jeremy Johnson, your elected SRIA official. And his lovely son, Barrett, has been volunteering this evening. Thank you, Barrett. We also have your SRIA appointed board member, Bruce Childers. Mr. Childers is here this evening. And we also want to welcome Sergeant Scott Rivkin, who is your sergeant out here, and he is in charge of things. So in case any of our questions or directions lead his way, or in case you want to start throwing tomatoes at me, he can be here for us. We would also like to introduce John Fay, who is a candidate for State Representative Andrade's seat. So he's here now, and he'll be here to listen to the issues that we have out here on the beach. So if you want to say hello to him, you are more than welcome to do so. Now, the first note of business is, if I could have a motion. I sent out in your emails a couple of weeks ago the minutes for the last meeting, and I believe we had them posted on the website. So if I could get a motion to approve our 2024 annual minutes, I would appreciate that. So moved. Okay, Karen Mize, and then I heard a so moved back over here. Was that you, Lynn? Or, it was, and Charlene Powell. So thank you very, very much for that. Next, I would like to give you our financial report. And before I do that, I am going to recognize our board members. You were greeted here by Dr. Jesse Pinnico. Where are you, Jesse? In the kitchen. He was your greeter. And then Greg Hodges is not here because he fell on his pier and he has injured his Achilles tendon, and he's been in the emergency room all day long. So that's not a good thing. But he, is sorry he cannot be here tonight. We have Steve Lupert. Would you please stand, Steve? Thank you very much. He's got some exciting things you'll be hearing about. And Bob Kellner is out of town right now. And then we also have Sharon Loper, your trusted treasurer, who is taken over for Glenn Wyndham. And then we also have Arthur Leary, who'll be making a presentation later. He's our website master. So he's been putting things on. And in fact, I'll go ahead and tell you that all of the old documents from the last incorporation attempt for the beach, all of the lawsuits, tax, etc., he has scanned them all, and they are all on our website. So, so if you want any back information, you should be able to go there for that. Thank you, Arthur, because I know that's tons of time. Now, financial report. Okay, so every 2 years, we have this big bill that comes up for our website, Wild Apricot. And it's our biggest expense, weighing in at almost $5,000. Now, I would love to get rid of Wild Apricot. I would love to do things differently, but so far, no one's been able to educate me. In fact, people don't even want to return my phone calls because Wild Apricot is the grand poobah. So every other year, we have to either transfer money in because our annual dues don't quite make up that much money to pay for that $5,000 payment. So we transfer some money from our money market account, which keeps at about $20,000. Now, for our revenues are from our membership, which is why I'm constantly begging you, please ask your neighbors to join. We're not planning on going up on the dues anytime soon, but our dues are $30, and that's what makes up our revenues. Our other big expense, go figure, the snail mail P.O. box, okay, $200 for that. And then we do some advertising throughout the year. And this year, you will note that the Gulf Coast Turtle Watch took over our very fun, loving, wonderful sea turtle baby shower. So we no longer will have that as an expense. We no longer have any revenue from it, but it's a wonderful adventure. It's a wonderful event, and it will continue to go on, and it will continue to benefit the Gulf Coast Turtle Watch. So our income this year has been $4,624.95, which is greater than last year because guess what? Our membership is over 215 to be exact. So we have been growing despite the fact that our registered voters are going down. But our total assets, because we do have $17,420 in a money market account, which we are looking at putting it into a short-term 5-month or 6-month CD so that we can capture more of some more interest on that. And then so that way we can take it out when we pretty much need it. But our total banking assets are $28,738.82. And so that is what we have in our accounts. And so I just wanted to put that out there. And we are banking still at Synovus, and we have our accounts, and then we have our accounts where your money automatically goes in. So we're doing fine. And let me tell you that if we want to incorporate and you tell me you want to do that, I will raise the money for the study because I can do it. So if we need money, we will get the money appropriately that we need to do that. So just wanted to say that as well. Now, before I introduce Chris Holly, I would like to give you a little summary of what we've been doing this year and why we are here right now, okay? So I basically want to thank all of our members who took our poll this year. We had almost 70 responses, and our membership has, like I said, has grown to over 215. If you are a guest here this evening, we want you to become a member. We want you to join our organization. We will not death. And I would like to mention a few highlights because I believe that it will speak as to why we have our topic for this evening. For the first time, our membership is slightly opposed to any parking garage going up in the core area because of our day visitors, from mischief and mayhem in the core to illegal parking in the residential neighborhoods and trash on the beach. These are the people who, come out to the beach who cause a lot of our problems. The other problem areas are from the large short-term rental homes that sleep 36 to 45 individuals. We know the impact that 25,000 cars and 110,000 day visitors, along with homes that sleep 40, has on our environment, our trash collection, our parking problems, and our noise. We have tried to encourage the Island Authority to collect a percentage of the rental income when the leases have called for it, because some leases call for it, and or to regulate short-term rentals to include an environmental impact fee. Last year, we really tried to encourage beautification and began looking at infrastructure repairs. We invited Dale Perkins to come to speak to us about the wastewater treatment facility and how that could be, better, how that space could be better utilized. We have suggested over and over again to both SRIA and the county how we feel the municipal services should be consolidated. how to best utilize our conservation areas in the low-density residential neighborhoods, and how to illuminate the crosswalks, beautify our rights-of-way, and urge the proper maintenance and improvements to our bike paths. A lot of you have commented on the bike paths, and we are going to prioritize all of that. We all want the beach to look like Gulf Breeze, from the bike paths to the beautification and the utilization of effective resources in government. We realize that a barrier island that is isolated from the mainland county relies on good working relationships with Gulf Breeze, but also with Santa Rosa County. You overwhelmingly also noted in your surveys that you want fee simple title to your property. I'm sure we'll hear later from Commissioner Hosberger if you have any questions about our congestion management plan and beautification. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to suggest how beach renourishment should be paid for and what you can tolerate when it comes to a parking plan or paid parking out here for the beach. Your suggestions were fantastic, and I also appreciate the time you took to tell me about your wants and needs in your neighborhood on the beach, and the projects that we've also been requesting to be repaired, but are not repaired or completed. As you know, PBA will take its agenda from your comments in the poll. Thank you for telling us that you believe the beach is advertised enough and the shares of TDT money need to come back to the beach or to pay for the beach renourishment and to pay for big ticket items like the Blue Angel Air Show. You would think for just a few years we could quit spending money on advertising and use some of it to repair what attracts people the most. We're going to take your traffic and parking suggestions and prioritize your responses to SRIA and the county, and they can see how we feel about certain projects and what the residents believe is needed. We need to work on off-beach parking facilities and shuttle our visitors to the beach when the parking is full. Residents must be given certain privileges when parking plans are developed, as they have in downtown Pensacola, where residential parking only signs have been installed in our historic areas. Look for those when you go downtown. We're all about maintaining the original vision for the beach: a residential core, a commercial core, and 100% free beaches for the public. We are just very frustrated with the lack of transparency at SRIA or the lack of vision to make the authority the best it could be. We are frustrated that when we ask questions in public forums, many of the appointed board members don't even comment or acknowledge. This is why we have invited Mr. Chris Holly here today. So, from the Florida League of Cities, which is a very reputable organization, to discuss what it takes to become an incorporated municipality in the state of Florida. Mr. Holly, the floor is yours.
All right. No.
There you go.
Absolutely no pressure, right? All right. Well, first and foremost, I just want to thank y'all for, one, being out here and being engaged, two, for having me here. But I want to talk a little bit first about who I am, where I come from. I feel like all of our shared experiences kind of shade the lens that you see life through. And so I want you to know kind of where I come from and how I got to be here tonight. So I'm a 6th generation Floridian. My family actually grew up in Northwest Florida. My grandmother taught at Crestview High School. My grandfather was stationed at Eglin Air Force Base. My father was born there. And I've been in local government my entire life. I say that because my father has worked for a city or a county his entire career. And so when I was born in Naples, he worked for the city of Naples and then Collier County. We moved to Live Oak, Florida, where he was a county administrator there. And then we moved over to Shalimar in Fort Walton Beach, where he was Okaloosa County's administrator. So I have been in city council meetings and county commission meetings and looked at budget books and seen this from a very young age. I lived in Fort Walton Beach and Shalimar when we went through Hurricane Opal and Aaron and back to back, and I drove the beaches. I was in the EOC when the storms came through. I've seen the work that local governments can do to respond to disasters and rebuild communities. And so my father told me not to go into local government. He said, son, just do something different. I went to Florida State and tried to do something different. And then interned with Leon County and got pulled in. And so spent 10 years after that working for the budget office. I worked for the Tourist Development Council. And then I was told that I had too much personality to be in the budget office and to be working in government. And so I had the opportunity to work with the Florida League of Cities. And so if you wonder who is the Florida League of Cities and what do we do, there is an association for everything. And we are the association for all of your cities, towns, and villages in the state of Florida. And we advocate on their behalf so that they can continue to make decisions locally. And I'll tell you that, and I'll go into some of this later on in my presentation, that is a constant battle. And I know we have hopefully a future representative who will support the powers that be at the local level. But year after year, there are more and more preemptions filed that aim to take away the ability of local governments to make decisions, to respond to citizens when they come to these meetings or to come to local meetings. So what my goal for tonight is I hope you came here, one, with passion for your community, to make it better, to make it more your own, to help those that are here, to plan for the future. You know, all of that is what I feel like the core goals are, right, of local government, is to hear from the community, take that input. You have elected officials that are put in place, that are the folks that you worship with, that you see in the grocery store, that you go to Parks and Rec with your kids and everything. Those are the folks that help make the decisions that lead your community into the future. And so I hope you're here to learn more about an opportunity, right, to have that here. But even if that doesn't work, and to be completely honest, it may not. You don't know that. We've made these presentations for other communities who are hopeful to become a city, a town, or a village, but that you stay engaged and that you listen with a mind that wants to work together. And I feel like as a nation, as a government that I see from all different levels, I really hope, and I have a 7 and an 8-year-old son, that they start to see more people listening and wanting to work together so that we can move everything forward, right, and make things better. So I don't have a clicker, so I'm going to keep coming over here. I think for tonight, and we're going to go through some high-level stuff, we're going to talk about who here was born in Florida. Okay, so a lot of folks who here moved to Florida. All right, so let's talk about the local government structure in Florida, because it is unique, right? It is not like other states. There are some similarities, but you have 4 distinct layers of local government, and so, of government. So you have counties. Who here knows how many counties there are in the state of Florida? Go ahead. Close. 67. Boom. All right, gold star for the young lady in the front row. There you go. So she's got it. So you have 67 counties. You can literally stand 1 foot in Escambia and 1 foot in Santa Rosa. There is no place that you go in the state of Florida where you are not in a county, okay? Counties are considered sub-states, right? They get their powers in the state constitution. So everywhere you go, just know that you are in a county. Beyond that, you have school districts. Who wants to guess how many school districts there are in Florida? 67. My young man right here. All right. Everywhere you go, they also function the same way, right? They are set up to support your local schools. You also have special districts. You are always in a special district, right? You are in the Northwest Florida Water Management District. Everywhere you go in the state, you're in at least one of all of those 3 levels. The 4th and the final level is the only optional level of local government. It is the only level where the people come together and they say, we want additional local control. We want a higher level of service. So we are willing to pay for that through ad valorem taxes or fees or for these services, right? Like we expect more. We want more. We want to plan. So we're going to come together. And now just over 50% of your state's population lives within a municipality. One very important aspect of local government in Florida, you'll hear the term home rule. And some people are a little triggered by that word. All that means is that decisions can be made locally by your cities, towns, and villages, but also your counties. They also have home rule power. So let's just use the state of South Carolina, for example. They are what's called a Dillon's Rule state, where any decision that they want to make, say they want to start a new wastewater treatment plant, they have to go to their state legislature, ask for permission, wait. If it's heard, if it's approved, then they can go home and go off and do good work. But you're lucky in the state of Florida, I think it was in 1968, the state legislature was honestly, it was almost like an efficiency measure. They were just getting hundreds and hundreds of these local bills, and they said, let's go to home rule powers. And now you can take action as long as it doesn't conflict with state or federal law. And so that gives you the authority to be responsive to your citizenry. This is just the answers to the questions, so I wanted to see where you guys were all at. But like I said, there are 67 counties in the state of Florida. They are your sub-states. Like I said, your school districts, there's 67 of those. Special districts, there's 16,000 and growing. And those all have a variety of powers, right? There are hospital districts, there are mosquito districts, your water management district, as I mentioned. 1,600, what did I say, 16,000? My apologies. Keep me on point. What I didn't ask you is that there are 411 cities, towns, and villages in the state of Florida. And that number, and I'll share a little bit later on the other communities who have looked at incorporating and whether those have been successful and not. I will also say, and you hear me keep saying cities, towns, and villages, instead of saying municipalities, because that's kind of difficult, there is no difference. So if you do choose to go that way in Pensacola Beach, you can be the city of Pensacola Beach, the town of Pensacola Beach, or the village of Pensacola Beach. And honestly, it doesn't even matter with population either. There are some towns with 60,000 individuals living in them and villages with 40,000. I will say, who wants to guess what is the smallest, how many people are in the smallest city in Florida? Anybody want to take a shot at the number of individuals who is the smallest incorporated municipality in Florida? 14 people. 14 people in Bay Lake. But they came together and they said, we want to have our own control. We want to plan, we want things to look and feel a certain way. So they incorporated. Who wants to guess the largest city in Florida? Wait, I heard the other answer that I always get. Did I hear Miami? So the population in Miami, 400,000, just over, okay? Jacksonville is your largest city at over 1 million. So it would take you more than 2.5 Miamis to make up Jacksonville. And some people might say, because it's a consolidated government, that it's Jacksonville-Duval. Just know that it says City Hall in the building that they're at. And their charter actually says the Municipal Incorporated City of Jacksonville. So we're going to claim them. All right. So what we're here to talk about. Municipal incorporation. It is a process, but at a high level, you should know that it is an act of the people. As I said, you come together and you make this decision. That process will lead you from the local level, as you decide this and the work that you will do through a feasibility study. You will come up with your plan, your charter, which I'll go into, which is your constitution. That will then go to the state legislature for them to hopefully hear and approve before it would come home for another vote, okay? All of that process is just a part of what gets a city across the finish line. The timetable for some of this, just for you to know, your feasibility study would need to be filed with the state and they receive those by the end of August each year. So just know that that's kind of like the shot clock when you're thinking about when could this possibly happen. You have each August is kind of like when that resets. And so as you're kind of pulling things together, you can start to think about long-term planning. And I'm going to go into each one of these in a little further detail later.
Finally gets to the vote, who gets to vote?
The individuals that you have drawn the lines around within this area. And so you'll get that through your I think your property appraiser and your supervisor of elections will help with that. So the smallest city created more recently since the 1980s was Jacob City, and that was in Jackson County, and they had 300 individuals. Since then, though, no city has been created with fewer than 3,000 residents. Our largest incorporated city was Miami Gardens, and they had over 100,000. But you need to know that the Miami-Dade kind of process is different than what you may have to go through here in Escambia. I talked about kind of the smallest and your largest cities, and this is just to give you a frame of reference when you're thinking about how this may fit into the larger landscape of cities across the state. Our median city now is just under 6,500. So Florida is actually not a state of super large cities. You know, when they think of the Orlandos, the Jacksonvilles, the Miamis and stuff like that, 60% of our cities actually have a population of 10,500 or below. And so we're a state of smaller communities that just want that control and that feel locally. So the process of incorporation, there was this boom of cities from 1950 to about 1970, where 100 cities were incorporated. And the state said, whoa, hold on a second. Let's go ahead and formalize this process of how this is going to take place. And so that's where we are today. So when you think about what your city, and I'm going to continue to use that word just for just a point of reference, you think of service delivery, right? And so some cities can have very small staffs, 1, 2, maybe 3 individuals, and they can contract that service out to an organization to hopefully get a lower price. So don't necessarily think that just because a new layer of government is established, that it all of a sudden is going to balloon with this great number of staff and individuals. There are ways to be very efficient, to utilize technology, and to contract those services. The example that folks have termed that is GovLite, and that's just a nickname. But more recent cities, the city of Weston, DeBerry, and Fort Myers Beach, have taken that kind of tact with how they provide their services. The slide up here says it's just a good way to balance cost with staffing and oversight. Funny backstory. So when my dad retired, he failed at retirement when the city of Fort Myers Beach lost, so they had a handful of new elected officials come through there, and they asked him to come in and be their interim city manager right after a hurricane came through. That was just the year before last. And so I also got a chance to go down there and see them rebuild, and they've actually got state funding to help rebuild their town hall. They've got businesses that are opened up now, and it's just to see kind of that growth, the community come together. I would hope that never you all have to go through something like that, but to see the leadership and to give that community a voice to be able to go to the state and identify funding or to go to federal agencies, they were blessed to be in a position to have to be an incorporated municipality. All right, so let's talk about how this is going to happen. One of the most important pieces to this, and I cannot put more emphasis on it, is the support of your local state delegation. If your House and your Senate member are not behind you, the greater body in Tallahassee will never hear your desire to become a community, if that is where you want to go. So you need to have leaders locally be champions on your behalf. I tell my children, how do you become a champion? Educate, preparation. And so if you can educate your leaders with how you've prepared, and that's through your feasibility study, they can see where you want to go and get that buy-in with you. But this is the most important part. So what happens right now is you begin the process of your feasibility study. And that is the document that you start to look at how your local city, how your community would function, how the funding mechanism would work, what services are going to be provided, what your budget would look like, obviously, where the boundaries would be. Then you get to a process where now you add your feasibility study, you bring that to your local delegation. They then file what's called a special act, and they have to be the champion to take that through the process in Tallahassee and get that approved. And the governor will sign it, and then it comes home for a vote. But just know that if this support isn't here, communities have gone through this whole process for naught. And they've spent the money for a feasibility study, and they've said they've had the support. But the other thing to consider is the timing I talked about, that August shot clock. There's a few of you I can see nodding that understand that maybe even your current delegation may not be the members when you're ready to move that feasibility study through the process. And so it is fantastic that you have somebody that's here who you can at least talk to and understand and maybe see the passion that you all have and can get on board.
So where does the county stand in all this? Are they friend or foe? And where's the money?
Two very good questions. So they can be both friend and foe. You will get to a point in this process where you start to look at, say, road maintenance, right? Or buildings that they operate here. That is all part of the negotiation process, but you have to look at what the funding mechanisms are going to be first, and then look at where that negotiation kind of goes from there. But that is an important part of it. And so I will also say, from some very basic research, you all have a very unique structure, right? And I think everybody here is aware of that. And so your situation will be very different than others who have gone through this feasibility study. If you have specific service levels that you all have challenges with, that you want addressed, and you find the funding mechanism to cover those potential costs, they may be a friend. They may say, well, if it makes sense and your community is willing to pay for that through fees or a property, however that's going to work, that's great. That is on you guys to do. We'll start to draw the lines and work this out. It doesn't always go that smoothly, but really it's the delegation, your House member and your Senate member. But the question that I would ask if I was in their shoes is, okay, one, how much support do you have in your community? Is everyone on board with the proposed funding mechanisms? The other hard part is you're not going to know exactly what it's going to cost. So say you're going around and you're sharing with your neighbors, hey, join us. We want to go on this journey together. They're going to say, well, what's the cost to me? Well, we have an estimate, but there's a lot of varying factors here. It depends on how these negotiations go with the county. It depends on, you're going to elect a body. They're going to set rates and fees and all this other stuff. So we kind of have an idea, but we don't know for sure. What we do know for sure, though, is that we'll be able to make those decisions. We'll be able to sit in a room like this at a city council meeting and talk about it and hold these folks accountable to the services that we want to get. So that's if they support that. Did I kind of answer the question? But
you did. And, like on the beach here, of course, I think a large part of our revenue comes from the hotels, the taxes, the bed tax. So potentially, could we then get that money and the county would not then get that revenue?
So, so tourist development taxes are a little bit, so there's negotiation. So it's written in state statute. Let me start here. Tourist development taxes go to your county. That is how they are distributed. And then there's a tourist development council, right, that determines where those funds can be spent. What you do if you incorporate is give yourself a seat at that table, right, as a member of that tourist development council, as an equal member, right, to talk about where those funds are spent. But those funds wouldn't directly flow into, say, your budget process or anything like that.
Could we establish an independent taxing authority somehow, or does it also county level? Or
That's great question for a municipal attorney or a county attorney. I don't want to give you bad advice, right? So also a very good question. So there are other options, right? It's not just city or bust. There are ways, but there are different taxing mechanisms. When we talked about how you're going to fund certain things, that could be an option.
And to state the obvious, right now, at least my perspective, is the county takes advantage of the revenues that are generated on the beach. And a fair amount of revenue doesn't come back to maintenance of the beach. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's why we're all here.
Right. So just know that very well stated point, in my experience through a handful of these communities who've gone through this, that's exactly why folks incorporate, right? Why they go through this process is because you want to have the ability to have input on what happens here, how it happens here, how money is spent here, right? Like that's the whole point. We're in this government experiment. All right, let's go through a little bit more. So, good question up front was who votes for this, right? Oh, go ahead.
If there's a discrepancy in what the people of the island want versus what the county wants, how is that resolved?
Can you repeat the question?
So, if I understand you correctly, if there is a disagreement between what individuals in the county want and what individuals in the city want, how is that handled? Well, it depends on who provides the service. Where does the money land, right? So I live in Tallahassee, which is also in Leon County. There is a disagreement on fire service and how that is provided, right? So they are negotiating back and forth with how that's going to be provided. The city feels like it should be handled differently. The county feels like it should be handled differently. I believe they are going to end up divorcing that service and figuring it out, right? So it's not always pretty, but they each have a voice in the decision-making process, which is the important part of this. Whereas right now, maybe you feel as if you don't currently have a voice. Correct. So the feasibility. Yeah. Well,
If you guys have questions, we have a microphone here that you can speak into to ask the question so that the people listening at home can hear everything.
Yeah.
We thought we were going to take questions at the end, but this young gentleman, and if you could raise your hand so he would know where you are. Okay, because Chris has got some good stuff, but we want everybody
Rhonda,
to
and I'm
hear.
sorry for not reiterating the questions that were asked previously.
So you can go.
So yes, go to your county commission meetings too. Come to Tallahassee, right? If there's, I'm a local government nerd, so I just say get involved, but time is a limited resource. So the feasibility study beginnings, at the very beginning, you're going to start to talk about, and I think there's, if I understand correctly, there's like an 8-mile stretch, I think, out here that you all are considering. You use census data, use county supervisor of elections, precinct data. Your county has a planning office. There's a lot of resources to kind of determine where your boundaries will begin. And that's where you start to look at what's that tax base look like. And we talked about kind of the funding mechanisms and the options that are available to you. All of that are the beginning steps of your feasibility study. So, most important part, service delivery. How is that going to happen? What do you want? Is it increased law enforcement? Is it fire? I passed a beautiful new fire building that was right down here. Do you want it over the planning of what Pensacola Beach will look like in 15, 20, 50 years, right? Your comprehensive plan. That's to me, one of the most important things. I mean, I love old Florida. We go down to Port St. Joe, if anyone's familiar with the Panhandle. Hurricane Michael did a number on Mexico Beach and some other stuff over there, but there's so many people moving to Florida. And it's good, right, for business and things. So I want it to be smart growth. That's my kind of the balance, right? And I want it to still work for my sons. I still want them to be able to fish and do all the great things that I was able to do growing up. So I'll get off my stump here. You'll know that if you do become a new city, you will have 2 years where you will actually still operate under your county's comp plan before yours kind of goes into effect. So the toughest parts of any feasibility study. Who wants in, who wants out? If you walk the neighborhoods, you're going to have folks that say, I don't want to be a part of this, I don't want to pay for this, I'm not interested in this, and that is understandable. But your lines cannot leave a circle in the middle of your area of folks that don't want to be in the city. It has to be kind of continuous, right? Yeah, Jeremy. I mean, I've seen some crazy things. You all have a good balance. I believe I drove through a little bit, and actually I was over here for the Blue Angels show earlier this year. Took my sons for the first time. But you've got some commercial properties here. There are some incorporated cities that are strictly residential, which makes things it's just the tax base, right? The mechanisms for funding the services can be a little different. And in the past, the legislature hasn't been very receptive to new communities who are strictly residential, because a lot of times that's just driven by, they want to have restrictions on growth and height and some other different things, which are valid reasons, right? But you all have a good mix, I believe. We talked about the fiscal structure, and I keep my assistant over here for bringing up a great question. You have a mix of taxes, fees, assessments. I commonly get the question of, if we become a city, are my taxes going to go up? Well, if I order more channels from Comcast Xfinity, is my monthly bill going to go up? Probably. If I add a new phone to my plan, is my bill going to go up? Yes. There's discussions of the elimination of property taxes at the state level right now. So most folks, when they get a new phone, you spread that cost out over 36 months. And the argument is you never own your home. Well, when I pay that phone off, Verizon still sends me a bill because there's services that I receive, right? There's still, so even if I own my property, when I call 911 and I want the police or fire to come out, when I turn on my faucet and I want clean water and my stormwater and wastewater systems to work and be maintained over time, all of that has a cost associated with it. But you have to determine whether that's the value that you feel like you're willing to pay and that all of your community is willing to pay. I talked about finding the commercial properties, that structure. The intergovernmental discussions are difficult. It's in all honesty. When you're talking with your county, when you're talking with the SRIA, when you're talking with your local delegation, Rhonda is a great advocate, passionate, I haven't had the pleasure of kind of speaking with any of the other board members, but you want leaders that see the vision and that know how to get you there, that are strong enough to make the argument of the why now, why should this work? And I think you've got that leadership, but you have to be willing to listen, right? And to come back, because they're going to challenge an idea, and you may have to go back and rework some numbers or to communicate with your groups and then come back with an answer. So just know that it is a process. So other house steps. I love that y'all have a website. I always tell folks that's the very first thing you should do, because there's a lot of information that you can get out to people, and it's very easy to just tell them, let them go there. You gotta communicate with everybody. I think you said you had 200 members. I'm not sure exactly what the entire population is out here, but the last thing you want to hear from someone is that they didn't know this was happening. It's a terrible look. And so if you've got folks, even all of you, if you picked 10 people and you went and talked to 10 other people, at least that then gets the word out and it starts, and you give people a place to go. I love Rhonda saying she will pay for that study. We'll find a way to pay for that study. You want a high quality feasibility study. I have seen them be challenged in the past with errors, estimates, and things like that. You want all of your I's dotted and your T's crossed. You just do. The timetable. These things can take 2 years. The fastest one we've seen, about 15 months. I mean, just to go through all the machinations, to have all those conversations, all the intergovernmental pieces, to get the support, to educate everyone. It's not something that's going to happen tomorrow. I mentioned, who knows what a municipal charter is? It is your constitution. So every city has a charter that lays out, should we have 5 elected officials? Should we have 7? Should they all be at large? Should they be single member district? Should we have a mayor? Should we have a city manager? Should we have a strong mayor? All of that is in your charter, right? They're typically only 6 to 8 page documents, but we've got some resources on here to look at like model charters. And just know that from the Florida League of Cities perspective, I am happy to always be a resource for Rhonda and your team to give you good examples of other charters that we think operate effectively and efficiently, because there's some things that you don't want in a charter that just maybe get too far down into the weeds. Charters are amended by a vote by the people. And so once your charter is adopted, if you ever want to change something like that, it has to go back to referendum. And so that's why it's very important to make sure that you lay out the structure of your government organization, and not too much in the fine print. So I keep saying it goes to Tallahassee. And just for everybody to know, where it specifically goes is in the House committee. And so there's an intergovernmental affairs subcommittee, and they actually do the first set of analysis. And I was talking to a colleague of mine who works with me at the League of Cities, and he was actually staff who reviewed some other feasibility studies and worked in this subcommittee before. And so I always just tell folks to know that if you have questions, if I don't know the answer, we have people that can find the answer for you. This process, the incorporation process, if anyone has trouble going to sleep at night, it's in chapter 165. Pour yourself a nice bourbon or a glass of wine. It'll put you right to sleep. But all of the details are in there. The specifics that need to be considered when it comes to like distance between cities and population thresholds, density, and all that. I also included the staff contact information for this subcommittee who will be reviewing the feasibility study. Personally, I always think it's a good idea before you submit. So like I would always do this like in school, submit a paper or a report. Let's go talk to the teacher or whoever's going to be reviewing this and find out exactly, let me play by the rules, right? Let me make sure I'm getting you exactly what you need. And so it's a good idea to reach out to Jonathan in particular. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious Thank you, Mayor. On the, bringing it to the House Committee, is this on?
Yes, it's on.
Okay. Who would be doing that? Would the local, or the House member for the area would take it to the committee? Okay, great.
That's a great question. So what happens with your feasibility study, and I talked about the support that you need from your local delegation. Your House member and your Senate member both have to file a local bill for you to become a city. So they have to file a piece of legislation that then they have to lobby to get placed on an agenda, and then they have to lobby for it to be approved, okay? For that to then come back home and be voted on. So when I talk about the importance of your local delegation being your champion, know that there are thousands of bills that are filed, okay, in each legislative session. And I've seen bills filed that never make it on an agenda, right, and just die for lack of being heard. And so there is a legitimate lobby and fight that has to be made of why this is important, right? This community wants to have their own authority heard. They have service issues that they're trying to solve. This is important to get put on an agenda and then make sure that it's approved. Did that answer the question?
Yes.
All right. Pros and cons. It's not all rainbows and sunshine. I've talked about cities and the importance of home rule and local decision making. That to me is just the most sacred thing, is that your voice is heard. No city is free. I talked about that. There will be some cost. You just don't know exactly, and that depends on how what level of services, right? You just determine that. And I mentioned this, and who knows who would be elected, but each city is only good as the people who serve in it. And I would say this about the county and about your state legislature, because if you don't have quality leaders, it's just not worth it. So make sure that you've got passionate individuals. And I think sounds like you do. We mentioned there are alternatives to incorporation. I don't know if you guys have gone down and had these conversations with your county, but there's a variety of ways that you can just, it's hard to have a collective voice versus just I'm a citizen and here's my address and I'm here to talk about why this is important to me. All right. So how has this gone for other folks? We'll start with the bottom. And I understand this is small text. I will make sure, I think Rhonda has a copy of this and you guys can put up on your website and so everyone can poke around. We went to Perdido, and heard from their group. Delegation just didn't want to support it. Same thing, I think, happened with Navarre.
Happened here too. Last 10, 30 years ago.
Yeah. Like,
Crashed and burned.
yeah. Like I said, early and often, start those conversations. Make sure you've got that support. Siesta Key in 2022, the legislature did not hear the bill, but they actually did have their local delegation that had support for them. Hobe Sound in 2018, they got all the way through, brought the vote back, and then it failed. Hold on, let me keep going, because I have stories. So Indiantown is actually, 2017 is the last time we've had a new city created. And just for reference, their population was 6,700. Their elected officials are fantastic. They are passionate about being educated. They want to be the best possible elected officials they can be. And And so it's been a pleasure getting to know them. Estero was incorporated as a village. Their population, 37,993. So that was back in 2014. St. George Island, their delegation wasn't willing to consider it. Point Siena in 2013, same. Loxahatchee Groves in 2006 became a town. Their population, 3,374. And Grant Valcaria in 2006 also became a city. So you can see in 2006 we had two, handful where the delegation wasn't interested. I'll say there have been stories of other incorporation efforts failing due to a lack of knowledge of what was coming. And that's what I talk about. Make sure if you're going to go on this journey that you're prepared with answers and a passion for why this is something that you may want to do. Go ahead. And this is, check this out.
Would you say that having a higher level of tourism makes it much more difficult?
Repeat your question.
So the question was, does having a large number of tourism hurt, make it harder, make it more difficult? So I would say no, and let me tell you why. I would make the argument that you're impacted by a significant number of individuals that are constantly coming into your community, and you living here want to have service at a level that manages those individuals coming into my community. And if you don't feel like you're getting that, are you now starting to feel like I need to move out because we've turned it, like, are you forcing me out of this area that I have come here, I have my home here, you know, this was my dream to be here, and now this X, Y, and Z is happening? There have been, one of the preemptions that has gone through is related to vacation rentals. And so we have fought that year over year over year over year, but I'll tell you that VRBO and Airbnb has a lot more lobbyist dollars and they can write bigger checks than anyone else. So it's a challenge. But somebody was talking about the number of cars and trash, and now all of that is regulated by DBPR because the state thought that cities and counties shouldn't be regulating vacation rentals that the state should. And so those complaints go there. Those are the types of things that the Florida League of Cities and the Florida Association of Counties lobbies for every single year, is that we want to just make sure that you can make those decisions here and that your local electeds can be responsive instead of someone coming into a county commission meeting or a city hall meeting and your hands are tied because the state preempted you or mandated something that challenged you. Also, really good questions tonight, by the way. Go ahead. Yep. And I also apologize for going long. I know you did. Okay.
Okay, I've been through this experience in another state, in Georgia.
Okay.
And one of the things that happened was we went to Government Light, and then the next thing you know, we had a multi-million-dollar city hall that was named after the mayor who came, you know, and wanted us to have a local government. How do you limit that? I mean, it goes back to the good people, but it's a very dangerous situation when you add another layer of government. And like you said, you're adding another layer of expense, but the expense was not sold properly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how something like that gets approved in a city council meeting without 10 times this many people in there going, what contract are you approving? Something like that. I mean, that's...
Yeah, at that time, then we had, licensing for all of your zoning and everything else. The city took over, and it became...
Right. So, Surfside, the city of Surfside, I just read an article this morning. They didn't, because election day for certain communities, they just put in a referendum that said it requires a majority vote of the entire council. Everyone has to support the vote if they're going to spend over $2 million.
So you could put that in a
You could put that into your charter. So there are ways to protect against certain, and that's, to be frank, a lot of times when you see that level of detail in a charter, it's because something has happened and they're trying to prevent it from happening again, right? But that can make things more difficult. And I believe they added the caveat that it's unless it's an emergency. So, hurricane or something in response. Go ahead, yeah.
I apologize, I was already asked this, but
Yeah.
does this have any effect on whether or not I am still leasing my land or if I can get the title for it?
That is a great question, and I am not a municipal attorney. So, no, that's what I mentioned before, that you all have a very unique situation here. There is no other community that I have dealt with that has, if I understand this correctly, federal land that was given to a county that is then leased, and some pay ad valorem taxes on the improvements. There's a mixed bag, right? So, and when I talked about, there has never been another example of an incorporation where I think you need the best feasibility study of ever, right? Because, and honestly, and I talked about this, because you're not going to know the exact specific costs, but you're going to have to give scenarios of like, if this happens with the county or with SRIA, then this is going to be our budget. And if this happens, this is going to be our budget. And if this, yes, ma'am.
Well, I just wanted to let the gentleman know that on our website, the previous legislative lawsuit that asked that exact question is on our website.
Yeah.
So that was from the last incorporation attempt. It was one of the things that held it up. And what I do want to reiterate to everyone in here right now is that in my comments...
Ms. Rhonda, can you get a microphone so the folks at home can listen to me?
I don't think this is on. It is. The lawsuit, the last lawsuit for the 1998 attempt is on the, it's on the website.
He's got a little streaming one on
it's
here.
for the online audience, so I can yell into it and I can yell at them too, it doesn't matter. But Arthur has scanned that last lawsuit that you're asking about. But I will tell you that in my conversations with Representative Andrade and Senator Gates, which I have had, they have both told me they want us to work on fee simple title. But they did not say that they would oppose incorporation. So that's our starting point right here. Okay? But as far as that answer to that question, what's going to happen if in August or next August you go to the ballot and everybody votes down property taxes, which is something that the governor wants to do, correct, Chris?
That is correct.
Yeah, so
if
he
someone
wants
wants
to
to have
do
a
away with
conversation with me
property
after
taxes.
this
So
and I'm not
what's-
streaming
right.
live, I can talk to you about
But that lawsuit
what
is
we're
on our
hearing and what's
website.
going on.
Is it two separate fights? Does one influence the other?
What, the fee simple and incorporation? I would say it would give us better financial vehicles and leverage. And Arthur's going to talk about a few things. But the other question earlier about the interlocal agreement, do we normally get TDT tax? It's all about the communication with interlocal agreements. That's why I said you don't know what it's going to cost you until you find out what you're going to get or what revenue shares are coming. Yes, we all want the TDT money, but I use this example because I'm from New Orleans. I worked for the city of New Orleans and worked for a woman who represented the French Quarter and at-large council members. Not once, not ever, in the 3 residential groups that lived in the French Quarter, they never complained about not getting their fair share of the money from the city, even though they are the generator in the French Quarter, okay? Good government, like Chris Holly talks about, is supposed to give us what we are due. And yes, we do not believe we are getting it, okay? So we know that, and that's why we're here talking about this, okay? And I'll let Chris take other questions.
Rhonda, you got a question right here. I think
Okay.
he's been waiting right here in the, like,
I'm sorry,
What's
here,
that?
wait.
who votes on this? So
Only
ear-
us.
Early in your feasibility study, when you draw the lines of what you believe your city would include, any of the property within that would have a vote. That is a great question. Because I would say the lease, so it's, if you,
If you're registered to vote here, you can vote on incorporation.
what is your address?
But if you're not registered to vote here, you're already paying higher property taxes than 6 months a year,
Mm-hmm.
probably spend more money in the local economy than a resident.
So your supervisor of election can answer that question for you. You can say, hey, this is my address, this is how long I'm here, this is where I'm registered to vote. Do I get a vote here or not?
I can't be registered in 2 places.
Correct. Yeah.
I will have to pay any taxes.
The
Just doesn't seem
yeah, but I think that's a unique situation. Hold on, we can.
If you're not registered to vote here, even if you're a property
Right.
owner, you can't vote.
Yeah, so yeah, second home. I mean, that's like, okay, yes, that's like your potential business or something. Yes, yeah. So that's I don't think so. No.
So I don't get a vote on it, but I gotta pay.
I would, yep, because you're paying for the service for that property. Yeah. So if there's a fire at that property when you're not there, because you don't vote on it, doesn't mean that the fire aren't going to come and put out the fire.
The vote to become a city.
Correct, yeah.
It costs me more money, and I have no say.
Right.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Sir, sorry. Yep, go ahead.
Let's say we go through the feasibility study, we get everything set up, we get the approval of everyone, all the leaseholders and residents on the island, everything's a go, we get representation through our legislators, their go. Can the county oppose that action and stop it?
I would ask that question of a municipal attorney.
Okay.
But I think if once it is signed by the governor and you vote, and if it goes through and it's a majority, it's 50+1, the county, they legally cannot stop that.
But the voters, the referendum would be the island residents and leaseholders, not the entire county, correct?
Correct.
That's a good thing.
Yes, sir.
You talked about the feasibility study, and we talked about paying for services and intergroup agreements, whether it be for policing or trash removal or whatever. What's your experience been in being able to get transparent numbers out of a county who is serving our area as well as the whole county, so that we can compare the accuracy of the feasibility study to what the real cost is today?
Yeah. I know, in very eloquently stated, early on in these processes, it's challenging to get a clear financial picture. But when you sit down with them, like the county staff, so I was in the budget office and there were other folks that tried to incorporate when I was at Leon County, I did the best job I could to get as close the way that I understood it. They could bring their feasibility study to me. They could point out some things, like whoever's working on your feasibility study works with the staff, and you go back and forth to make sure that, does this make sense to you? They may challenge that assumption. They'll have to make a reason why. But it's a public record. I mean, those numbers, it can't be hidden. If you have a valid request and you want the analysis that backs it up.
It's just, if you have a county that doesn't want you to.
They cannot block or withhold information.
I got you, but okay, I got you.
Yeah.
It's a question of the fox watching the hen house on the numbers.
Sure.
I've got a two-part question.
Can't wait.
What role does the federal government have in this, with considering that it was originally granted by the federal government, and with the amount of failures that we have of incorporation, if this is being used as a tactic to get fee simple, what is your opinion on that?
One, I don't give opinions. And two, I'm not an attorney, and I don't know enough about the federal decision that was made, I believe, back in like the 50s, 40s. Yeah. So I would say you've got two things in front of you, right, that need to be involved in that feasibility study. Is one, understanding that the land part of this, the ad valorem piece of this, to your point, right? Who's going to be voting on this? Who has a say? Who doesn't have a say? What the land implications are? Does that change after this? I mean, is there a willingness for it to change? Those are all need to be vetted and researched and included. I think Rhonda's nodding. Anybody else got two-parters? You want a three-parter?
Let's try. Has this gone where communities have brought this forward to incorporate to where maybe the county, who is supposed to be supplying the services that we feel like we're not getting, has maybe had a wake-up call and tried to start ponying up and providing the services that we're lacking out here that is pushing us towards incorporating? Because it seems like we got here because we're not getting, as taxpayers, what we feel like we're entitled to from the county. And has that ever happened in a situation where the counties maybe woke up and said, hey, maybe we do need to start getting public works to go into the Island Authority meetings, or code enforcement, or having law enforcement show up at all these meetings? Has that ever happened?
I have seen groups like these become more organized and and participate more in county functions. I've also seen groups not only have their own county commissioner who's in their district, but it opens the eyes to other commissioners that maybe weren't as aware. But again, sometimes it's more you having a unified voice and a seat at an intergovernmental table that you do not have unless you incorporate. So that is can be a challenge. Yes, sir.
I would like to take just a second here to shame all of us that did not participate in the survey. Speak up or don't gripe about it. It's the same example of what just happened in New York with 50 million Republicans that didn't even come and vote. When Rhonda sends out a survey, my grief with PBA all these years has been there's such a small sampling of the people that are giving their opinions. I want to know what everybody feels about it. Don't complain about it if you don't get involved.
Not a question, but a statement. Hope you all took notes.
Are
Are there any other questions?
Because we do have Commissioner Hofberger, who would like to say a few words. And then,
He's going to talk about money.
well, he's coming after Commissioner Hofberger, but yeah, he's going to talk about money. So, and I forgot to introduce your two new board members. So,
Okay.
Are there any more questions? Because his presentation will be on our website. I know I don't have the microphone. Sorry. Sorry about that. His presentation will be on our website, okay? And this is the education part of it. We're starting with education. We are educating our community, and we do want to hear from you. I want to hear from you if you want it or if you don't want it, because I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing this for you. And I want to do what you want me to do, not what I want to do. Because I'd like to be sitting on my deck right now, not, but, so I want to do what you want to do. And when we get to the communication part, it's very, very important. So, and we want to thank Chris for coming out here from Tallahassee.
Really and truly, this is what is so important. Being active, being engaged, whether you agree or disagree with what's going to happen. This is the best part. And Rhonda was gracious to even offer,
I said, I'll pay you. I'll put you up in a hotel. I'll feed you, whatever it takes.
I'm doing this on my own, y'all. Driving over here and driving back to Tallahassee tonight. This is my passion, right? Whatever you all decide, I hope you are more informed now than you were an hour and a half ago. If nothing else, right? What it takes, what it doesn't take, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And if you have questions or other information, my contact information is on here. Rhonda, this presentation will be up here. The Florida League of Cities is available. You have legislative session that is going to begin in January and February in Tallahassee. Y'all, there's a lot of decisions being made in Tallahassee that impact your everyday life, and you have a lot of people don't know that. So thank you seriously for having me, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. All right, I want to get, before we start with Arthur and his figures, two things I want to do. I want to introduce two new board members that I need your approval on, because I was so excited to get to Chris, I skipped over to the agenda. Mark Morocco, could you please come up here? And if I could have Miss Susan Roberts. So I just want to show you their faces so that if you see them having fun on the beach, you can aggravate them. No, just teasing. Don't do that. But we sent the bios out, and these are two board members. We are losing Steve Lupert and Bob Kellner. So we would like to welcome Susan Roberts and Mark Morocco to our board to lead. And if I could have a motion to accept these two nominees for the board. Dave and Sharon. Oh, thank you. I appreciate everybody first and second. And can I see a show of hands in favor of accepting? Thank you very, very much. Come on up here, Commissioner Hochberger. Thank you. Grab them and talk to them afterwards. Thank you. Here you go.
Thank you so much.
Yay.
Chris, thank you. I feel like you should be teaching a civics class. So it was a good crash course for all this. Rhonda, thank you so much for putting this on and for advocating for your community. I get asked a lot about SRIA and what the BCC's relationship with the SRIA, and my response is we have some awesome people who serve on the SRIA. Lizzie, Bruce, thank you. But it is difficult to be county commissioner over a district and have an entire portion of my district, the beach, governed by people who are appointed by other county commissioners. And oftentimes I hear, well, it's just like working with the city. And I say, oh, no. It is not like working with the city, because those people are elected to represent the people. The people who sit on SRIA are appointed by the other county commissioners. So it does make it very difficult. And essentially the BCC has no oversight over SRIA. Like I said, I have a great relationship with many of them, but it is difficult because it is not necessarily a representation of the beach community. So it is hard to navigate that. So thank you for providing some additional information on how you guys might be able to move forward. And I'm here to support whatever the beach residents want. If this is something that you guys want to move forward, I'm happy to support that. If it's something you're like, hey, no, we want to take a step back, maybe not right now, maybe not ever, I'm happy to support that as well. And I think that's what makes our community great, is you can have your voices heard and you elect people to support your vision. And I am very excited to do that, whatever that vision might be. Whatever that vision is, it can't just come from Rhonda. She is amazing and she can help rally things, but your elected officials need to hear from more than just Rhonda. So I guarantee you that your senators and your state representatives are being lobbied by other people for or against this. So they need to hear from you as well. So if you are really passionate about this one way or another, reach out to them. It's great to have a letter from Pensacola Beach Advocates, but it's also really important that they hear from you individually. I do want to highlight some things that have happened. I guess it's been just over a year where we had the debate next door, and I sat there and I laid out what my vision was for Pensacola Beach. And I think one of the questions was, what is going to be the first thing that you do? And I said, we're going to put an ambulance on Pensacola Beach, because when you guys call 911, someone should be ready to respond. And I'm happy to say that since February, you guys have had a dedicated ambulance on Pensacola Beach. So that is a big win. The fire MSBU, it did not go exactly the way that I would like it to go, but I did fight for you guys, and we did get it reduced from the initial proposal. So I want to tell you that I appreciate all of your support on that, and I did fight tirelessly on that. John, I know we did several interviews on that. I did several press releases on that. I called Rhonda. I said, get people from the beach to the BCC boardroom, make sure that it's heard. I went to the SRIA meetings, communicated with Lizzie on that, and we did find a path forward, and I just want you to know that I fought for you guys as much as I could on that. One of the other things that I said I would do when we were in the room next door was, you guys deserve a pretty entrance to Pensacola Beach. You drive through the toll plaza that looks like an entry to a military base, and there are orange cones and giant signs that say, do not stop, keep driving.
About spending $7 or $8 million to say, welcome to the beach.
That was miscommunication. So a lot of that money was actually for installing fiber so we could have smart traffic. The sign was only about $1.1 million. The rest of it was for infrastructure upgrades, safety upgrades, and traffic upgrades. So I do own the fact that that was not communicated correctly. It was never about the sign. The sign was
Discovered. We have been discovered here.
right. The sign was to cover the tolling equipment. The sign was not to let people know they made it to the beach. But I do want you guys to have a pretty entrance to your neighborhood. If I live in East Hill, if I drove by large traffic cones and giant signs that said keep driving, that's not a very welcoming way to greet me when I come to my house. So I want you guys to have something that you're proud of and that is indicative of the community, not something that looks like it's a construction zone. Thank you. I also want...
Raise our hands if you have questions.
Status of that, great. So the toll plaza will be removed and the new tolling equipment will be installed by this summer. So we are voting on the actual construction contract at this next meeting, and we'll be able to move forward with that. Like I said, a lot of safety upgrades coming there. You guys only have 2 lanes right now. Literally, the last time that tolling equipment went out, we had to buy the parts on eBay. So it is outdated. We can't get new parts. Let's hope nothing breaks between now and then.
Are we losing toll revenue right now?
No.
The old equipment?
No, that's why there's only 2 lanes. So he asked, were we losing toll revenue? So if you notice, the far left-hand lane when you come over is blocked off and you can't go through it. That's because we couldn't get new pieces of equipment. So essentially that should be working. It's not, and that's why we have to replace the tolling equipment. And there is one of the other things, you guys should be able to leave the beach and come home on the weekends and Friday afternoons. So we have commissioned a traffic study, and I was asked, why another traffic study? Well, the car numbers that are going through, exactly. So anytime we have more than 20,000 cars a day go through the toll plaza, it gets backed up and problems start to happen. 6 years ago, that was 12 days a year. You guys hit over 60 days a year this year. So we have to have solutions that fit our current problem, and we didn't have a traffic study with that. So that traffic study has been commissioned. A lot of that is going to focus on pedestrian safety, where to cross the roads, when to cross the roads, how to cross the roads, traffic timing, smart traffic. We have to be able to get fiber to the red lights so we can control those from the traffic center instead of somebody in a room playing red light, green light. So several $1 million is actually to upgrade the traffic system, and that was all part of that plan. So wanted to communicate that as well. Do we have time for a few questions?
If you do, yeah.
Okay, a few questions. Yes, sir.
With the electronic problems at the toll booth, that seems rather dated. I mean, what is it, Radio Shack and Atari 2000?
Yeah, so the question is the dated, outdated equipment that we're using to toll? Yes, and that's why we can't get new parts. It is very much outdated. We are buying the equipment directly from the manufacturer, so we will save on some markup there, and that's why we've got to replace it, essentially. Yes, sir.
What's the new toll entrance going to look like?
So it will look like it's going to be the tolling gantry based on the feedback that we got from the community. So have you driven to Orlando before?
Yes.
Okay, you know the when you go through the toll roads?
It's industrial.
That's why I wanted to put a sign over it. Yep. So it will be painted at least to blend into the background. So when you drive by the water tanks, the very top blue wave that's about the sky color, we are going to paint it to match the water tanks, so it will at least blend in as much as possible.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up.
I'm being deluded of those poles that are going up.
Crosswalk lighting.
Oh, the crosswalk lighting. Yes. Yes. It did take us a few months longer. There was, we'll say, a snafu with the contractor. So I apologize for the delay.
And I actually heard that some of his equipment got stolen when he left it in a parking lot. So
I hope he had insurance.
I hope so too.
Any other questions?
What kind of, when you did the study or started talking about the parking garage, how many days a week or how many days a year did you actually determine that you would need a parking garage?
Great question.
It's kind of like having a church that only attend on Sunday and then it's empty the rest of the week.
I am so happy you brought that up.
Thank you.
Yes. So we are doing the traffic feasibility study, and part of that was if we put a parking garage, what would the right size for that parking garage be? And then my request was that not only it be a parking garage, but something that can double as community space in the off season. So why could you not have pickleball courts or tennis courts at the top? I mean, if it's not being used for parking, why can't you use it for community space? So I want to make sure that we design something that if it is feasible to put in, that it will also be an asset to the community.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Ashley. We really appreciate, oh, sorry, didn't need to trip our commissioner. And I also want to just state that Elizabeth Timothy is another appointed commissioner from the SRIA board, and she has joined us this evening. I'm sorry she snuck in. I didn't see her. Now, I'm going to give it over to Arthur here. Now, he's a CPA. Now, you know they know numbers, but he's going to be nice to you, and he's limited his discussion to 10 minutes to talk about the good and bad and the money part of incorporation.
Thank you, Rhonda. Isn't she doing a great job? Yeah. And to spare you, I know that a lot of people don't like seeing a bunch of numbers on a screen and then taking the actual numbers out. And part of the problem is when you're doing projections and there's a wide range of what ifs, it's kind of hard to fit that in. And then the questions are more about, well, how did you determine those numbers? Why is that in there? And then it kind of drifts off from the subject. So what I'm going to do, and this presentation will also be on the website. So I see some heads nodding a little bit, and so I'll go fast to not hold you. And I promise I won't take more than 10 minutes to go through this. It's just going to be a kind of the basics, what goes on with these issues as far as on the cost side, what's been happening, and kind of what the unique situation is for Pensacola Beach. Because like Chris said, there's no other community that's quite like this one. Of course, I love it because there's other special reasons like the water and the sand, but specifically the structure of the governmental structure in the area is quite unique. So I'm going to go ahead and get onto this, and then you can follow along on, I'm not going to read exactly everything that's on there. I'm going to skim through pretty quick, but common incorporation issues, any place that wants to incorporate, some of this was already been covered, so won't have to delve into it. But yeah, there's complexities. You heard about when Chris saying there. Incorporating it, there's different costs compared to the status quo. Obviously, people are, what's it going to cost compared to what we're paying now? Isn't that probably the number one question? Or at least high up there. That's a big issue. And then, yeah, there's advantages and disadvantages. Tax obligations people don't like. They like having services, but those cost money. What are the costs under incorporations? Well, every place is going to have increased local taxes. Like Perdido, that was the issue, and I'm going to actually have the Perdido information in here. Higher property taxes, people don't like that. And then there's other ones that can come about from a municipal government. Administrative cost, because most places don't have any kind of local entity like that. Like with Perdido, who runs Perdido? Is there some kind of a Perdido authority? No, Escambia County runs it. If you get incorporate, then they would have to have a local government, administrative staff, and all that for the various departments. That was part of the reasons why it was kind of knocked down. Not the only reason, but a huge part. It's like that's going to add a lot of cost. And then another consideration, enhanced services. If you're going to have some more services, it'll add to some cost. Whether they're going to, municipalities will bring in sanitation, law enforcement, and all that. But an easy way around that is just have an agreement with the sheriff's office to continue to do what they're doing. So a lot of those things don't apply to every city. Some of the things you can still maintain from the county. This is just what every place has to think about. And then what a lot of people like is they like to have control, self-governance, but there's a cost to that. To go to self-governance, it's not free. Like for Perdido, so many that were for that wanted that local control, but they have no apparatus there right now, and adding that would cost a lot. A little different here, and we'll get into that. But what are the costs under the status quo? Well, you know what we got on here. You got unincorporated area, it's governed by the county, residents don't pay certain taxes, but here on the island, there's something else that you do pay. I think some of you have heard about, and I've heard Tom Jardine mention it a time or two at the SRIA meetings, something that's paid. And thank you to all the leaseholders out here that you're the ones that pay for everything out here. Right, Tom? That's correct. Less local control. Yeah, some benefit from established services. They say they don't like the limited government control of the status quo, because out here, yeah, you're paying something, but do you have the local government control at the local level that you would like to have? Rhonda already mentioned it, that a lot of people say that it's not happening, but this lack of control and lack of concern is the reason why most places want to seek to incorporate. And the last thing people mention is about stability of the tax rates. Existing tax structures don't really fluctuate as much, or like for here, instead of taxes, think, what's that thing we love? Lease fees, yeah. Those kind of they don't fluctuate much, but with new taxes, those could fluctuate a little bit more, or maybe not, depending on who you have running your local government. And so just a conclusion, what we went over, the decision is going to, you've got cost and benefits. Any decision, it's going to be some higher cost, but you can gain some better services, or my favorite part, what I love, control. The biggest thing to me is there's a lot of money generated here on this island, on this 8-mile stretch that, to me, it's like paradise on earth. But a lot of that money, or most all of that money, yeah, it goes to the county. How much comes back here? That's the, whatever it is, it's not enough. Yeah, and that's the, okay. Now, I don't know if y'all knew that, Rhonda did mention it. There was a study on incorporation in Pensacola Beach in 1998. That study is on the Pensacola Beach Advocate website. I've just got some of the highlights in here. Take about a minute to go through this. And they looked at how's it going to alter the landscape between replacing the SRIA with a municipal government. Now remember, 1998 is operated then a little bit differently than now. Something happened around, 2007-ish, that kind of changed some of the money that's going out of the pockets of everyone here, right? But yeah, what are these potential cost differences? And this is back then. Lease fees. People loved they preferred the lease fees instead of property taxes. They said, well, property taxes, and in this study it showed, yeah, the property taxes are going to be probably higher than the lease fees. And the study had some stuff, well, we could trim down the size of the SRIA or something, because it was back then it was larger than some municipal governments of a similar size. But the ones they compared it to didn't have a huge influx of summer tourists like happens here on Pensacola Beach, because